So today, throughput on Solana, theoretical throughput is about 65,000, and Firedancer will make it 1 million. So we're seeing, a step function increase in scalability of the network with Firedancer, and additionally, it will create an independent validator client, leading to more resiliency in the network.
So, Nick, again, it's great to have you with us. For people who don't know, Nick Dukov, he's the head of institutional growth for the Solana Foundation. And yeah, today we're going to run through some of the exciting developments around Solana, what Solana actually is, and of course, looking forward into the future. And yeah, again, today's audience obviously includes a lot of traditional investors who are increasingly looking beyond just Bitcoin. And many are hearing more and more about Solana, not just as a high performance blockchain, but also as a growing investment theme. So today we definitely going to explore what makes Solana unique, why it's attracting fresh attention for especially recently, and where we might be heading. So let's get into it. Maybe Nick, to start off, for those who are less familiar, how would you explain Solana in one or two sentences?
Sure. So Solana is the most used public blockchain in the world. It has incredibly high performance, and it's a layer one blockchain. And the original vision for Solana was to become an on-chain Nasdaq. And I think we're closer than ever to achieving that vision, though, of course, the job's not done and we're just getting started.
Absolutely. And how has that vision evolved over time, especially given the market shifts? We see some regulatory changes, and maybe even the macro environment, but also investor sentiment. So how has that impacted the vision?
So I actually think that one of the things that has led to whatever success Solana has had is that we've stayed true to that vision over time. Something that Tolly and the founding team has said from the beginning is that we were building a high performance layer one blockchain to become the on-chain Nasdaq, and that's something that we continue to strive for every single day.
No, and obviously Solana has seen impressive growth across various metrics. So what are some of the key milestones or even inflection points for yourself that stand out to you?
Yeah, so a couple. One would be that we're now regularly doing over 100 million transactions on the Solana blockchain every day, which is incredible. And that accounts for over 2/3 of all blockchain activity on all public blockchains. So the vast majority of all public blockchain utilization occurs on Solana. Another one would be chain GDP on Solana, and that's total application revenue, has grown 20% quarter over quarter, rising from just under $1 billion in Q4 2024 to 1.2 billion in Q1 2025. Also, stablecoin market cap has expanded quite considerably. USDC is now 10 billion on Solana. Tether has over 2 billion, and there are another 5 different stablecoin issuers with over 100 million of market cap each on Solana. About 13 billion total stablecoins market cap on Solana. And also the average daily DEX volume has grown 40% at quarter over quarter to almost 5 billion daily.
No, we also had a key finding in a recent report that we released, and it really puts things into perspective. So in the months of January and February this year, the Solana blockchain actually, they handled over 350 billion in transaction volume. And just for the listeners to put this in perspective, the Nasdaq did around 650. So again, it's more than half that Solana is already processing. And I think that's just testament that you're getting closer and closer to that vision as being the Nasdaq on chain. But from the early days to now, what's been kind of the biggest learning in building such a network, building a global permissionless blockchain, a layer one blockchain with such a unique design approach?
So I joined Solana Foundation in July of 2023. There was 300 million TVL on Solana at that time. There's now 7 billion plus. So we've experienced quite a lot of growth over that period. But, if you go back to the beginning, I think the thing that makes Solana unique, and I'll say it again, is this just incredible commitment to the vision of building, an incredibly highly scalable network that can support something like on-chain Nasdaq, right? And one of the things that Tolly says all the time is our goal is to increase bandwidth and reduce latency. IBRL is kind of the rally cry on the technical side of Solana development, and it's something we've remained steadfast committed to, and I think that's one of the reasons that while some other layer ones have very long-term roadmaps to achieve scalability, Solana has been the highest performing, most scalable blockchain from the start and continues to improve over time.
I would agree with that. I think Solana really has shown that it's really good in executing on their roadmap and really shipping out new tech and most importantly, consumer-facing applications. So it's quite exciting to see the momentum. But I mean, it's been a rough ride, I would say. Obviously, Solana have come a long way. So obviously over the last couple of years, we've seen this renewed momentum in the Solana ecosystem. So what other main drivers do you think are behind this resurgence?
So we think about Solana as three layers. The bottom layer is the blockchain itself. And of course, Solana is an incredibly high performance, scalable, cheap layer one blockchain. And then the second layer is technology built on top of the underlying blockchain. And that's technology both for developers to make it incredibly easy to adopt and build on the Solana blockchain. And then it's also technology for users, making it a delightful experience to use the Solana blockchain. It should just feel like you're using the internet, right? Not using the blockchain. And then the third layer is the economy. And I think getting to your question of, what's led to some of this renewed momentum, I think it's a flywheel because you've got this great blockchain, you've got great enabling technology and user experience, and then you've got capital and talent coming together to create an incredibly vibrant economy and ecosystem where more capital is flowing into the system, and capital likes capital, right? Capital attracts capital, and I think that flywheel is really starting to spin.
Absolutely. I think what's also really important in my opinion is just and you mentioned that, you alluded to it, it's just a user experience. I think what we do in Web3 in general is building infrastructure, but I hope that we're finally abstracting away from the technicals and the infrastructure layer to more of the application layer, where we finally onboard the mainstream and the day-to-day users. So I mean, there's a lot going on the Solana ecosystem, and we could talk about it for days. But are there any specific sectors within the ecosystem, that you're especially excited about right now?
So, I lead institutional growth, so I'm always excited about tokenization and real world assets. But I think there's just so many exciting segments growing in the Solana ecosystem, from DePIN to DeFi, and everything else. And I think that's because of our focus on founders, applications, and tokens. You mentioned UX being so important. I 100% agree. The application layer is really, where we're going to see mainstream adoption. And so we're very focused on attracting, going back to the, three layers, the blockchain, the technology, and the economy. We're really trying to attract the best talent, the best founders to build on the Solana blockchain, and in the ecosystem. And those amazing founders create incredible applications that we all want to use every day. And, if you're building in the blockchain, you're building in crypto, there's often a token component to that as well. And tokens drive a lot of the DeFi and trading activity on the chain. And I think, again, that brings more capital, more talent, into that economy and creates the flywheel that makes Solana a really vibrant ecosystem. And we saw that last week in New York at our Accelerate conference with over 3,000 people in attendance, and just the vibes were immaculate.
No, I heard so. I heard so. No, I would agree on that. I think also the DeFi sector is one that is overlooked on the Solana blockchain. And I think we will see a lot of TVL grow, especially this year. But yeah, let's see. I think one sector that always been very controversial, and I definitely want to address because I know our audience and listeners want to talk about it as well, and that is meme coins, obviously. So meme coins obviously have exploded on the Solana blockchain. They've also driven massive activity, but they also sparked some debate. Some dub Solana as kind of like a meme coin chain. So how do you see meme coins and how do you see their role in the broader Solana ecosystem?
Well, you mentioned earlier that Solana is now doing about half the number of transactions that Nasdaq is doing. And I think, to the extent that meme coins helped demonstrate that the Solana blockchain was capable of really high volume, high frequency trading of real risk capital on chain, I think that's a very good thing. We saw unprecedented levels of activity on Solana in January, and Solana held up incredibly well. I think the MoonPay team told me they did something like 3 million KYC verifications in a single day in the month of January. And, it's bringing all these people to Solana, some for the first time, demonstrating how the network has hardened and is capable of, trading volumes at Nasdaq scale, and settlement at Nasdaq speed. So with real risk capital. And so, as far as I'm concerned, meme coins have been great for Solana. It really proved out, a lot of what we're trying to build with respect to the vision of being an on-chain Nasdaq. And also, if you look at stable coins, there was, 5-6 billion at the end of the calendar year 24. And today there's, 12-13 billion. And, a lot of that was on-ramped to trade meme coins, but it's all stayed, right? So if you look at meme coin volumes today, they're much lower than they were in January, yet stablecoin volume is much higher. And so I think what that showed is it brought people in, people stayed to do other activities on Solana, and I think that's a very positive thing for the network.
I love that. I think it's very similar to my perspective. I agree. I think it's the best battle test, the best stress test that you can have for a layer one blockchain. And if it's driven by meme coins, so be it. I always tell investors that it's important to battle test the infrastructure because in a decade, 100% of an investor's portfolio will be digital assets. And with digital assets, I mean, it will be a big part might be tokenized equities. Another part might be tokenized US treasuries, tokenized real estate, and a smaller part will be crypto assets. But I think we all agree that 100% will be in digital assets. And therefore, you need a robust network to settle these transactions. Now, obviously, I know you're responsible for institutional growth. So what are some of the topics that are most discussed, or from your seat, what's driving institutions at the moment to take a fresh look at Solana?
Sure. So first of all, it's the most used blockchain in the world with the most active wallets. So if you're an issuer of an asset and you're thinking, should I issue, an asset on the blockchain? What is going to be your primary consideration? Your primary consideration is going to be, are there people on that blockchain to buy it, right? Other than the foundation itself. And if you look at Solana, it's the most used blockchain in the world with the most active wallets. So the answer is unequivocally yes, right? So I think, one, that's what's drawing folks like BlackRock and Wellington and Hamilton Lane and Apollo and Van Eck all to issue tokenized funds and equities on chain. And then, of course, it helps once you see folks like BlackRock, the largest issuer asset manager in the world, and Franklin Templeton and others, then it makes it easier for the next asset managers to say, well, if it's good enough for BlackRock, it's probably good enough for me. And so I think that's been really helpful in kind of breaking the logjam and opening it up for more and more issuers to come onto Solana. And they've found success on Solana. You had Hamilton Lane announce at Accelerate last week that they're issuing a second fund on Solana, this one via Republic, and it will have incredibly low minimums, $500 minimums, and be able to be purchased by retail. So just KYC, no accredited investor status is necessary for that particular product. So I think we're seeing just broad adoption by large financial institutions of Solana, bringing more tokenized assets on chain. And then the success that they find when they issue those assets on Solana leads to them issuing more and also bringing more new issuers to the network as well.
The infamous flywheel. But what would you say? What are some of the remaining challenges when it comes to institutional adoption? For instance, what infrastructure or tooling improvements would need to be done to get Solana even more institutional ready?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I'll give you a very specific example. So Societe Generale is issuing the Euro CV stablecoin on Solana. The token has been ready now for a while, but there wasn't yet a centralized exchange in Europe that was MiCA compliant, that was capable of custodying and issuing SPL tokens. And so I think that's an example of, something that is holding back, more institutional growth and adoption, is just, broad capabilities of very basic functions like custody, right? Tokenization. And you see that in the States too. The good news is I'm aware of a number of large financial institutions that are building out custody, and that will be fabulous, when those are all live. But you've got Bitcoin, of course, which is a $2 trillion asset, and is the big player in the ecosystem, and that has driven, a lot of growth and adoption for all that came after it. Then, of course, you've got Ethereum that was regulated as a commodity under the prior administration, and so was, kind of more given that clear regulatory guidance, led to more institutional adoption in the United States and elsewhere. And I think with this current administration, you have a really progressive administration who wants to see the adoption of crypto more broadly. And so I think you'll see those capabilities, both the regulatory clarity and custody and other capabilities be added by large FIs for Solana in 2025.
A lot to be done, but very exciting. Absolutely. So I think what's also, we said it at the beginning, Solana is obviously known for its performance and high transaction throughput and low transaction fees. But I know we're getting a bit more technical here, but there were some really exciting announcements, a couple months ago, but even more recently during Accelerate. So how are you trying to push the advantages you already have even further with efforts like Firedancer or Alpenglow? And maybe you can quickly explain that to some of the listeners that might never heard those terms.
Sure. So as I mentioned earlier, kind of the technical rally cry of Solana is IBRL, increased bandwidth, reduced latency. And so Firedancer first is an independent validator client being built by Jump Crypto to increase scalability of the network. So today, throughput on Solana, theoretical throughput is about 65,000, and Firedancer will make it 1 million. So we're seeing, a step function increase in scalability of the network with Firedancer, and additionally, it will create an independent validator client, leading to more resiliency in the network. So already, Firedancer is live on mainnet with a few percentage of stake weight, and I think we'll see that grow over the course of this year and be adopted as the primary validator client either sometime late this year or early next year. And then Alpenglow is an upgrade to the consensus mechanism on Solana. So it will separate consensus votes from execution, which will lead to more resiliency in the network. And it will also reduce the cost of operating a validator in the network because validators won't have to pay for vote transactions. And current estimates are that it will reduce the cost of participating in the network as a validator by as much as $60,000 per year. And then additionally, on the speed side, it will decrease finality from around 400 milliseconds to under 200 milliseconds thanks to a single round of voting. So in summary, Firedancer will increase throughput from 65,000 to 1 million, and Alpenglow will have finality from 400 milliseconds to under 200 milliseconds.
Well, that sounds exciting. Obviously, therefore we will definitely see some improvements on the execution layer, but also on the consensus layer. And I think it's really, really important. Again, if we want to onboard 8 billion people onto the blockchain, the throughput and the transaction fees are just very, very important. Thinking about high frequency trading, but also more consumer-facing application, especially gaming, you need a lot of throughput in order to achieve, this mass adoption. So definitely exciting.
I live in Boston, Adrian, and every time they've expanded the freeway to add more lanes, more cars come drive, right? And so I suspect similarly, as the throughput of Solana increases, you'll see more utilization of the network.
That's a good point. They should do this in Dubai as well, but they don't add any. What are some of the under radar technical developments that especially the institutional audience should pay more attention to? Something that they might miss as of now.
Yeah. So one is token extensions. Token extensions are part of a new token program, the Token 22 token program that was released early last year. And most of the RWA that is issued on Solana is issued using the Token 22 program, which has things like permanent delegate authority, making it easy to comply with regulatory requirements such as season freeze. It has transfer hooks, which make it easy to comply with KYC AML regulations. And it also includes other features such as confidential balance amounts. And so PYUSD, the PayPal stablecoin, for example, is using this feature. So everyone that learns about token extensions, like their minds are just blown by how easy it is to create permissioned tokens on the permissionless network using that token program. So that is one. A second is one that we just announced last week at the Accelerate conference, which is the Solana attestation service. So it makes it incredibly easy to onboard users to Solana. And it's an open permissionless protocol for verifiable credentials. So I would say token extensions and the Solana attestation service are two under the radar technical developments on Solana that institutions should be familiarizing themselves with.
Absolutely. I think token extensions are so important. They also set the stage for more tokenization products and more institutional adoption. Because obviously the KYC AML question has always been a big hurdle for them to at least start experimenting on chain. So therefore, they should definitely look into it. Now, I wanna round things up and maybe look into the future. So, what are maybe kind of the 2-3 most important things that the Solana Foundation is focusing on just to continue the success and also to continue scaling adoption?
So I would say first on the technical front, it would be IBRL, right? Increased bandwidth, reduced latency. So not only are we building the fastest, most scalable blockchain in the world, thanks to advancements like Firedancer and Alpenglow, but the Solana ecosystem is trying to build an entirely new internet as well, thanks to ecosystem projects like 00. So that's one I would take a look at for sure. A second one would be tokenized equities. So as I mentioned, we had 3,000 people attend our Accelerate conference in New York City last week, and there was a slew of incredible announcements with respect to tokenization. One, X stocks on Solana from Kraken and Bakkt, bringing tokenized public equities onto Solana, which is a really exciting development. Two, opening bell. Superstate is tokenizing public equities for secondary trading, starting with Sol Strategies soon. Also, it was announced that R3 is building a Solana mainnet capability to connect Quarta blockchains, Quarta private blockchains with Solana mainnet. So look out for HSBC, SDX, and other R3 clients coming to Solana soon. Another one would be Centrifuge is bringing their decentralized permissionless RWA to Solana, marking a first for Centrifuge on Solana. And then finally, Apollo's Accred private credit fund is now available for looping on Camino and Drift in DeFi on Solana. So I would say more tokenization on Solana and continued increased bandwidth and reduced latency.
Wonderful, wonderful. I know we're almost at time. Is there anything that we haven't covered? Anything else that you want to tell our audience before we close the call?
Yeah, so we're having our flagship Breakpoint conference in Abu Dhabi this December. I hope to see you all there.
Wonderful, wonderful. And with that being said, I just want to highlight real quick that we released our new State of Crypto, obviously on the topic of Solana. Obviously, we covered a lot of new things in this call, but there's also a lot of exciting announcements that we found in. So if you want to just scan the QR code, you get a quick link to our research, but also feel free to download our newest State of Crypto. There's some very good insights. It's definitely a good read for all institutional investors, traditional investors, but also if you just want to learn about the basics. And with that being said, I would say, Nick, it's been an absolute pleasure. I wish you all the best for the future. And yeah, I hope to see you soon again.
Thanks so much for having me.
All right. Have a good day. Bye-bye.